All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So just thank you so much, all of you, for tuning in today to Strategies for Optimizing Virtual Mentoring Experiences featuring Technovation. As you are all beyond aware, the world around us is a drastically different place than it was only a month ago. Amidst the sudden shift to working from home, learning, and constant sanitizing and health monitoring, it's actually really easy for aspects of life kind of deemed non-essential to move down our priority list. But with young people, especially girls who are drastically underrepresented in STEM careers, who have been taken away from so many of the opportunities where they would have had access to role models and mentors and supports that could boost their confidence and propel them into STEM majors and careers, the need for virtual mentoring becomes even more essential to our future workforce. So here at Million Women Mentors, we are a movement that is all about increasing the confidence and interest of women and girls to pursue STEM careers and leadership opportunities through the power of mentoring. And just because we have moved to a virtual shift in world, that does not make that mentoring opportunities even less important. It actually makes them significantly more important. And we know that organizations with robust mentoring programs see even greater employee engagement and productivity, and individuals who mentor feel more connected to their work and the community. So today, Technovation leaders Tara and we're going to hear from Tara Chlofsky and Mackenzie Doncho from Technovation, and they are going to be sharing with us some examples of how organizations can keep their mentoring programs alive and have significant impact through technology and project management. So we are going to be recording this session, and we will be sharing it in follow-up so that you can continue to bring it to your networks. If you do have questions during the content, please do utilize the chat feature, and we will respond as soon as we can. So thank you all again. And with that, I am just going to go ahead and turn it over to Mackenzie, who is going to kick us off into our content.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. So I'm Mackenzie from Technovation, and we're excited to be here with you today to talk about what it is to be an awesome online mentor. We at Technovation, we have some online learning programs we've been running for a number of years, and we have a lot of best practices and guidelines for how to be a really effective mentor and online mentor, which is really becoming vital in this time when a lot of students are out of school, they're trying to work from home and are still looking for that inspiration and motivation to keep learning and creating. So we're really excited to be here to chat with you. And I have Tara Chlofsky and Bryant Gomer also on the line. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara, and I started the nonprofit. We were formerly called Iridescent, and we changed our name to Technovation last year. I have been trained as an aerospace engineer, and when I was in a PhD program at USC, I felt that experts, industry professionals have so much to give back to the broader community. And that was the core of the nonprofit that I started, which is that both groups, students as well as mentors, can learn from each other. And yes, so it's been a long journey, 14 years. And I think, I don't know about best practices. I can say here are all the mistakes we've made. I have a phrase that I came across last year, which really resonates with me, where it says correct, but seriously incomplete. And so I feel like that's the level of understanding we have. We're sort of along the right path, but a lot more to learn. And I didn't come at it with that point of view in the beginning. I thought from an engineer's arrogant point of view that I was like, this has got to be easy. And now every year I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't know so much. So it's more from a point of humility that we are sharing what hasn't worked, rather than saying, okay, here's what you should be doing. So I'll hand over the introduction baton to Bryant, who leads mentor engagement.
Thanks, Tara. It's always fun get to follow up you. But hi, everyone. I hope you and your families are healthy and safe in these remote and changing times. My name is Bryant Gomer. I'm the Senior Director of External Relations and Mentor Engagement at Technovation. Just briefly, my background is in education as a classroom teacher, high school and middle school. Kind of what motivated me into the nonprofit social impact space was looking for opportunities to connect my students to the world of work, to industries I know my students weren't getting in Richmond, California, in San Jose, California, despite being surrounded by so many great industries, so many great companies, lacking that connection, that visibility. So organizations like Technovation really motivate me to provide awesome employees and volunteers like yourselves to connect with students that I know are in classrooms around the world.
Mackenzie,
Awesome.
you should share your background.
Yeah, I'm about to. So I'm Mackenzie Dancho, and I work with our volunteers primarily to communicate, engage with them, and make sure that they're having a good experience mentoring with the students that they are with Technovation. I came prior from a government background, so I worked in criminal justice reform and saw how a lack of kind of technology and some innovations there were holding everyone back. And I'd gone on to work further and volunteer with some students as well to get their ideas about how you could change things in government with a nonprofit that was local in New York City. And that sort of led me to Technovation, to seeing how many great ideas kids could come up with to change the world around them, and how much we should be really listening to those ideas and encouraging those ideas. So that brought me here. Great. So now I'll just go through quickly the agenda for today. So we want to introduce Technovation, and Tara will kind of overview what we do at Technovation and why we do it, and then get more into the journey of a mentor, what it is to be a mentor, what are the different stages of mentoring, and on to how you actually motivate others, build a strong virtual team, how you get started with your first meetings with a team and with your students that you would be mentoring, and then some project management tips, and then following at the end with learning about our volunteer opportunities as well. Great, so I'll pass it off to Tara.
Thanks, Mackenzie. So I already gave a brief background on Technovation. Our mission is to empower underserved communities, and girls are definitely one part of it. I'm always surprised by these statistics that say there's no place in the world that has gender equality. And so this battle is a big battle. And I think the UN just released the One Planet report yesterday, I think, saying what the impact, long-term impact of COVID will be. And one of the sort of scary things it said was that all the progress that we've made for education, gender equality, health benefits could be wiped away because of COVID, unless each person really stands up and thinks about the other, thinks about who else can we help. And I think that is the heart of our organization's model, where we rely on volunteers to really go beyond their own needs and to say, let's give back and support other people, especially young people. So there is that element, but there's also an element of capacity building, where we want to bring cutting edge technologies to these groups. 10 years ago, it was mobile, and now it's AI. And these are technologies that can help groups leapfrog traditional paths to prosperity. And entrepreneurship is one key part of it. So Mackenzie, if you can go to the next slide. This is sort of the core of what we do, where we bring mentors, people who don't actually need to have any kind of technology background, but are professionals and have some experience tackling problems, right? And we want to connect them with groups, families, girls, and together they find a problem that's meaningful. Most times it's aligned with the UN SDGs, and then they create a technology prototype to tackle some of these problems. And here are some of my favorites. The one on the left is a girl from Palestine and her mom. They created a machine learning model to look at children's drawings to see if the child was suffering from bullying or depression. The one on the extreme right with the three girls, they created an app. They're actually, two of them are orphans. And they worked with a former Technovation alum, and they created an app for orphanages to be able to track which social worker is supporting which child, so that when the social workers move, the record for the children is not lost. And then the one at the bottom right, where there's a picture of a mobile app and a QR code, that one is absolutely amazing. It's from an extremely remote mountainous town in Bolivia, and an incredible mentor who would drive 4 hours one way on a bumpy mountainous road each week for 12 weeks to bring technology entrepreneurship to this remote town. And the mentor was very surprised because the first day when she reached this group, and she was saying like Technovation is a mobile app competition. You have to create a business plan and to think about revenue models. And they were very surprised, like, why do you want to sell something? And then she realized that this town actually doesn't use money, they barter. But they all had smartphones. And so that's just incredible. And so because of this mentor, they actually created a QR code driven app where they pasted pictures of different codes around the village, because people walked a lot. And so you could scan the QR code and teach yourself how to code, teach yourself the language, the native language that was dying out, and teach yourself math. So these are just examples of how incredible mentors combined with local communities come together with very, very innovative ideas that you would not normally see from traditional app development houses. So just a quick, the next slide shows a little bit about our reach. And our team is just 23 people, full-time people across the US, but this is just testament to incredible partners worldwide who are volunteers and who want to improve the technology entrepreneurship sort of capacity in their communities, but also lift up girls and women. And so we're currently operating in more than about 100 countries. In many of these countries, we have a footprint that goes beyond 7 to 8 years. So there's a real element of sustainability when local mentors, especially from universities and industry, take it upon themselves to give back to the communities. And then I just don't want to spend too much time, but I just want to go a little bit into our own journey of understanding what is important to teach. So in the earlier years, we thought that combining coding plus entrepreneurship would be a powerful combination. And surprisingly, it still remains a pretty unique combination because there are tons and tons of programs that just teach you how to code. But over time, when we have seen what is the long-term impact of this program on participants, it really is sort of the entrepreneur's journey, where it's not just taking the coding tutorials and creating a mobile app, but it's really taking that solution to market. And that requires understanding human behavior. It requires understanding yourself. It requires understanding complex systems. And so now we are beginning to realize that we need to provide deeper support on all of these elements, because if you don't, the mentors feel pretty unsupported when they are having to deal with these external problems. So this is room for us to improve and to have a higher bar in terms of curriculum and training and support. And then the next slide, I just want to showcase some of the long-term evaluation reports. We've had multiple 5-year look-back reports, evaluation. But the one that I want to highlight is the point number 3. So we partnered with Boeing many years ago, and they actually did an interesting analysis looking at how this mentoring program affects the professional skills of engineers. And the interesting point there was that entry-level engineers were being partnered with very senior technical fellows to work together, because they all wanted to support their local community. So that was the commonality, but it helped break traditional hierarchical groups. And so it really helped, I guess, team building and bonding and mentoring internally, technical mentoring. And then finally, the engineers were saying that looking at what children and families were coming up with jump-started their own creativity, because it went against all what their formal training had told them would not work. And just seeing the value of just try it, kind of an attitude was very, very inspiring. So this is one thing that we want to reinforce, that it's not you coming and saying, I know so much, I'm going to give my content knowledge to you, but it's more like from a position of humility, where what can we learn together? What can we do together? I just want to, I'll hand it over to Bryant in a little bit, but I just want to talk a little bit about what we have found over the past so many years. We do pre and post each year. And what we hear consistently from mentors is a couple of things. our programs are not easy. They are 12-week long, and the mentoring commitment is significant. It's not an hour of code, or it is a 12-week program. And many times the mentors are learning new skills. They're learning how to code a mobile app. They're learning about AI. They're learning about project management. So they come in thinking that the girls will work harder. And what surprises them is that the girls did not work as hard as they would have expected. And so this is something that we are struggling with. How do we provide mentors with better support so we can surface some of these expectations and discuss them, and because this leads to frustration, because if you had higher expectations and people did not meet them, this leads to frustration and dropout. So that's one area of growth and improvement for us. The second one is, it really is grounded in motivation theory, because, and any one of you who has had to lead a team knows this. There are periods when you're not excited about your work, you're not excited about your project, and here there's no salary or financial reward to motivate you. So you have to really understand, well, what is behind human behavior and human motivation. So that is a big challenge. And last is just the logistics and mechanics of mentoring the team, because honestly, this is the standard tech startup journey, which is not easy, because you have to identify a big problem, and you actually have to deal with all the barriers and deploy something that's an effective prototype while managing all the team dynamics. People have different ideas. So this is a very traditional tech startups journey, and mentors don't fully internalize the complexity of what they're getting into. If they did, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that's something for us to explore a little bit more. And so my last slide over here is just sort of mapping out the journey for a Technovation student. And there's two different types of loads. There's a cognitive load and there's a emotional load. And the cognitive load is pretty high in the beginning when you're learning how to code. Most of the girls and students actually don't know anything about coding. And then there's quite a bit of a crash when, because it's a 3-month journey. And so after you learned the coding, it's very, very concrete. You're following these tutorials, you're feeling great. And then you're like, okay, but well, what am I solving? And so then another little bump and boost is when you learn about your team, the social support is helpful. And this is the hardest part, and this is where we lose most of our participants. We have roughly a 60% attrition rate in our programs because this is hard. And so this is our challenge as an organization. How can we support the mentors, better equip them to go through the slump? And this is where that motivation theory comes in. And then if they're able to get through this part and actually deploy a prototype into the community, get feedback, then the team is on their way to success, because the social feedback from the community and approval is great. So this is where we are. This is sort of the current state of our understanding. And I want to hand it over to Bryant, who's going to talk a little bit about the mechanics of mentoring.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, to focus in a little bit more on this individual mentor now. A lot of how Technovation frames our role for mentors and thinking about the evolution of a mentor, it comes from Steve Kozlowski's research on team leadership and development. His work really emphasizes the journey a mentor takes and that kind of evolving nature of the role. Mackenzie, let's get away from that intimidating slide and zoom in a little on this one. Zooming into the 4 stages though of the evolution of a mentor. And this is how we think about the role of a mentor at Technovation, but it also applies to any mentorship role you're having, especially in these virtual times that occur over multiple sessions. So from that first meeting with your young people you're meeting with, your students, you enter as the mentor. Your role is a mentor, where you're there to mold the team together, mold your new team members, align on your mission, your goals, your shared attitudes, as well as kind of helping to build your team's shared affect and attitudes to kind of bond your team together. That first step is to really kind of be a bonding leader for your team in that first session and beyond. From mentor, you transition into the instructor, in which in which you've kind of built some shared values and a shared mission. And now it's time to support your team by delivering some of the skill proficiency, some of the content that's needed. It's still a little early for the mentor to assume their team can go seek that out on their own and know exactly what tools and skills to use. So an instructor is directly providing that skills that's in helping to develop self-efficacy with its team. From instructor, as you move along in your learning sessions, you transition into more of a coaching role where you're there to promote your team's capabilities, promote your team's behavior. As opposed to as an instructor, you're kind of more directly delivering that. As a coach, you're promoting that and cheering your team on to find answers to their solutions, to better problem solve as a team. And then as you transition from a coach to a facilitator in your learning sessions with students remotely, it's important to physically announce to your team, okay, now I'm ready to completely hand the reins over to you. You're ready now to take on your learning roles, and I'm now transitioning to a facilitator, the last kind of stage of a mentor, where a facilitator is simply there to enable the team's self-management, maintaining team coherence, that your team's still aligning to those norms you set way back as you entered your journey as a mentor. Personally, my past experiences teaching in classrooms, it was always a dream to work towards being a facilitator where you can really trust your students to guide their learning. In no way did I want to be up lecturing in front of my students for an hour. That just was not worth their time. It's building those skills to get to being a facilitator, I think, is key. And you can just bring all those up, Mackenzie, full slide, thank you. And as Tara mentioned, just the role of motivation and really thinking about how can a mentor best move from these stages to get to being a facilitator with their team. I think the biggest key is motivating your team. Motivation needs to happen all the time. It's not enough just to assume your team will come, your students will come motivated to participate because they have a program. It's not enough to assume because you have a quality curriculum, they'll be motivated to dive into it. It's that mentor's role to provide motivation opportunities throughout the learning process. And that's in your learning sessions, in your meetings, and also in between. Kind of the 4 E's of the motivation theory are exposure, experience, expectations, and energy. You're motivating through exposure. You're exposing your team to familiar things around them where they're seeing the learning they're diving into, whether that's making a mobile app or an AI prototype. You're showing them where it appears in the media, in the news, in TV shows or movies that might be relevant to their lives, providing kind of an in-person model of what they're doing, how that really looks, maybe in your own role, in your own work experience. You're motivating through their own experience, making sure they have a way to start their material, their curriculum. They're getting predictable and frequent feedback from you. You're providing that experience of reliable feedback to grow as a learner. In their experience of goal setting, it's important to set goals and be rigorous in your goals, but do have a way of meeting those goals and showing your team how they're meeting those, being successful, or ways they can adjust to meet those goals. Expectations, it's important to, as a team, set your expectations to motivate each other. And that includes incorporating parents, incorporating educators these students are familiar with, their peers, as well as yourself, aligning on rigorous expectations that can be met. And lastly, energy, motivating through the energy. As I mentioned, it's important during sessions, of course, but in between. Are you checking in, conveying the message, I believe in you, we're gonna come ready next session, sending them motivational videos or things to check in on before you have a chance to meet again. Because I think something at Technovation we struggle with is typically teams meet about every week, and some of that motivational energy is frequently lost kind of in those gaps in between with so many different things going on. How are you going to ensure your team comes motivated to be a part of the team, be a part of the work at that next session? And there's no easy solution, but that there are ways to be kind of aware of it.
Great. So now I'm going to jump back in and talk a little bit about how to build a strong virtual team. So, just to start, I think it's interesting to say and note that Technovation, we all work actually as an individual, as a team, but as a virtual team, we're all communicating online. And many of us now for our jobs are doing this. So I'm sure there are ways you can kind of look into your own life and into your own teams you already have to to find some different tips and tricks for how to make sure everyone stays connected and in tune with and aligned with where the team is headed and achieving the different goals that you have. When considering mentoring with students, I think one of the first things to make sure you're checked on is to have that parental consent, for safety reasons, and also because it can be helpful to help start aligning students to have parents brought in, especially in a time like this when people are home together. Many parents may be busy, but this is definitely a first step to making sure, if you're working with any minors, that you have that parental involvement and engagement. This could be via email, that you just communicate with them to check in. The next point is to set up communication mediums and schedules. So you want to start to understand what you have access to currently. Are you using Gmail? Are you able to set up a Slack channel? Are you able to communicate over, whatever the students maybe already are using, and then start there, and then be able to introduce them to some new tools they can potentially use to do something like a video chat, which can help you bond a little further, to see each other's faces, if that's available to you. So communicating via email is always something that's possible. And when you're doing that, you want to just make sure that you're kind of giving yourself a robust introduction, and very open communication, transparent about, what your thoughts and ideas are and what your expectations are. And that comes with setting those schedules as well. When will you connect through these mediums? Having really set times, so that way you're consistent, and people know when to log on. Because if you're not showing up in person, sometimes it can be easier to just not sign on to your computer. So you want to make sure that you have some reminders set in place and some things set in place for students to remember to come on and meet with you. And the next point is signaling your actions.
Can I add something there? I think,
of course.
I think it's just so much easier now when kids are like Zoom experts. So I feel like things have changed very rapidly right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course it depends on, where you're tuning in from in the world, and, what access, different people have. So I always like to keep it open, but it is, the younger generations now have incredible awareness of Zoom, and even some are doing this through their school systems. So they've started to really get used to all of these different devices, computers, iPads, Zoom, a lot of different apps. So this could definitely be a mutual learning experience, setting up these modes of communication. Great. So yeah, the next point is just signaling your actions. So when you're starting off with students, especially if you're on video, you can always share links to different resources you're using. Make sure you say, I'm using this tool to research, if whatever it may be, if it's just a quick Google search even. Sometimes it's helpful to tell students where you're finding information, how you organize and prioritize your information, and really just be verbal about that, or definitely share those links and structures that you use, so that they can model them in the future, and you can move from that mentor stage getting towards that facilitator where they actually pick up those tools and are able to use them themselves. And then the last point is just, if you have access to use video and different collaborative tools, think outside of the box a little bit, how you can kind of edit on the same platform, how you can use maybe some of the Google Suite options, or you could use different coding platforms if you're doing something with coding where it allows you to build together. So it's making sure to look out for those tools depending on what your subject area is, that there's many things out there you can do to have collaborative engagement. Idea Flip is one that we use often at work to kind of get different ideas and think about how to get everything on one page where everyone can contribute and then talk about what they're thinking about and brainstorming. So now I'll move on to just some things we focus on for the first meeting to build a sense of team from the start. When you're first meeting students, whether that's in person or virtual, and starting up a team and trying to come towards a consensus, the first 10 minutes of that meeting is really where you get across who you are, what kind of communication style you kind of exude naturally, and that's the style that the team will then start to embody and follow. So the first thing is really to reduce any ambiguity around how this team will function. You want to introduce yourself and do some actual bonding activities. So more than just a quick, hi, this is me, this is what I do. You'll want to maybe get into some of those icebreaker games where you can start to understand how your team also communicates, how they'll introduce themselves, the different personalities that you have in the group, and how you'll start to form those together to a sense of team, a team identity. So that next point there is to create purpose. So you want to ensure consensus on that team goal and mission. So some great ways to do this is for you to have looked at some materials depending on what the program is you're doing, and have planned this out a little bit in advance of what you kind of understand the goals to be, and then hear from your students as well how they see their involvement in this team and where they think they're going. There's different ways you can also, if you do find in this first meeting that people have very different ideas of the goal or what they want to be doing, you can introduce voting or some brainstorming around what the ultimate goal is, which should be something that really brings students together, and to assure that they'll be learning, less maybe about the end result, more about the learning journey. So that's always a way to focus. If you find people have very disparate individual goals, focus on what that learning will be like and how we'll grow together as a team. And what you set those goals as, something that we'll talk about in the next couple of slides, is just to keep that at the forefront of the kind of reminder for teams at each meeting, at each stage. So that way you don't lose sight in those individual goals or tasks that you might be doing. The last point is to talk very openly about social structure. So make sure that you say explicitly what you expect kind of behaviors to be like, whether that's showing up on time for meetings, how you want to communicate and give feedback, and starting to understand exactly how you'll all work together. Continue to introduce that in that first meeting, and then continue to bring that back as well, to make sure that everyone knows what's expected of them and they don't forget that, especially if you're working with younger students, just making sure to kind of guide them on that and facilitate. Great. So the next slide is about project management. So I think something to understand is that, or that we understand as people who are trying to help volunteers often in our program, is that you guys all have jobs of your own. So when you're coming to mentor a team, sometimes you might just, be running late from work and quickly jump onto this meeting with your team, thinking it'll kind of organically come together, and the girls may have, or girls, or whatever team you're working with may already have their plans in place for what they're going to accomplish in this meeting. I think there's a great way to maybe get to that stage towards the end when you're more of a facilitator and you've got a real cadence for how things are going to go. But certainly at the beginning and even through the middle, and quite often at the end, to make sure that a team is actually going to achieve the goal, you'll have to make sure that you do some pre-planning. So some tips on the side there, maybe having a quick icebreaker, having an agenda with certain meeting targets, things that you want to accomplish through the meeting. So making sure that you have that planning in place to go into the meeting, or whatever your expectations are with your team, even if it's just via email, you're not necessarily meeting, but you're making sure that you're hitting certain targets that you want to hit. And after planning, it's kind of making sure that when you've planned your meeting, now you're in the meeting, make sure that it's kind of running smoothly. And something that's great to build in and make sure that you're executing on your goals is to actually have some work or build time during the meeting itself, so that there is some sort of output and result by the end of the meeting, and your team can feel accomplished, like you have accomplished something together and you've learned something together with that time. And then when you move on, you want to kind of control some of those processes, right? As you can see in this little circular diagram, is that you want to keep things moving. So as soon as you're done kind of building with those new learnings, what your targets are, you've accomplished some of those targets during the meeting. Now you want to make sure you recap and solidify those learnings and plan for what should be expected to be completed before that next meeting time, or what you're going to then want to accomplish in the next meeting if you are getting the bulk of your work done together. So that's just sort of a way to kind of keep things moving and keep project managing your team. Make sure that you plan in advance, you actually execute in your meeting, and then you're controlling for the next things that are going to happen with the team and how you're going to keep moving forward. So here we just have a quick meeting checklist. I think when working with students, especially in teaching, it's 90% about encouragement and 10% about the content. So as a mentor, you really are there to make sure that your team is aligned and excited to keep moving through whatever project it is that you're working on. So here's just some really quick tips to make sure that you check these things off in every time that you do meet with your students or with your team. First is really simple, smile. You know, I say it's really simple, but sometimes depending on if you've had a hard day, it can be difficult to remember, which is why we've added it to this checklist. Make sure that you are smiling, you're trying to be upbeat. This should be fun, especially if you're working with students that are trying to learn. So make sure that you're kind of bringing that positivity yourself and giving feedback on what people are doing in the team and making sure that that is also positive as well. If it's all negative, that can be very hard for a student to continue that motivation to move forward and keep learning, especially in a time when they're already having some difficulties, maybe in their home life, you know, not having some of their expectations met with school. So really some positive reinforcement there. And the next is to also make sure that in each meeting, you do reinforce that team goal. So with students, we often like to say that it's more about the journey than it is that end result. So make sure that you're reinforcing that, you know, it's really important to keep moving through, to keep that learning journey going. And whatever that team goal is, you keep reiterating that. So people don't get lost again in those individual tasks. But then make sure that you have those performance expectations also set as well for people to show up, for people to participate. So the more that you kind of focus on that and make sure you draw, you know, make that a focal point of the meeting, it will start to set into the students' attitudes and the way that they show up for each meeting. The next point is to make sure you do some sort of activity. So playing a game or doing a concrete build to make sure that you have learning. There's something you can point to at the end of each meeting saying, we have accomplished this, we have learned this together. And that, you know, that will give a lot of motivation to students, feeling a little bit of elation that they've accomplished something in your meeting. The next is then at the end of every meeting, it's very important to check in and reflect on what work has actually been accomplished. So to solidify that learning, just make sure you're vocal about what you have done in the meeting. But so the last point is, as I'm talking a bunch, minimize talking and maximize your doing. So that's why we kind of like to put that build or game in there. So there's a few quick things you can do at the beginning and end of each meeting, but make sure the bulk of it is actually having students do work, accomplish, and learn. I'll pass it off to Brian.
Thanks, Mackenzie. And just, I saw a question in the chat about, do we have examples of helpful icebreakers we've seen work? I know Tara's looking to dig up a resource we have that we can share in the chat box. I think there's some examples in our curriculum, but kind of just in general for the icebreakers, especially early on, those first couple sessions when you're really building, kind of being comfortable with your team and your teammates. I think the icebreaker is about getting a smile on your students' faces, and with that smile, getting them talking about something. In my experience, it's about talking about something they're comfortable with. It can be about music, it could be about movies. So they get the energy up, they're laughing, they're talking, and then you can transition into the curriculum you already have, kind of with kind of an upbeat, highly kind of, you know, engaging way they've been talking already. So for example, our weekly team meetings, Tara mentioned there's 23 of us. Most of those members are on the call. And the person that leads those meetings, he puts all of our faces on the spinny wheel. I don't know the name of the app or website off the top of my head, but if you just search wheel, you can put names on. And he spins it and he just asks like a random question. If you had to listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be? And he spins it and it lands on me. And I, of course, say any Bruce Springsteen song, and we have a good laugh. And there goes Bryant again talking about Bruce Springsteen. And it doesn't have to do with the meeting, but everyone's laughing. It's usually on a Tuesday, so sometimes Tuesdays can be rough, but we're laughing and then we dive into a really in-depth meeting, and it really helps. I know our whole team looks forward to the spinning wheel and what random question Nick's gonna come up with. So I do want to transition to the actual opportunity and call to action we have for you all today, which is volunteering as an online judge. So we've kind of given you an overview of Technovation Girls and some resources for mentoring with a program like Technovation Girls. Now our call to action is for judge recruitment. We're in the final month of our season. Technovation Girls runs on a season. where our teams around the globe, thousands of participants, are submitting their mobile prototypes. They're starting to submit now, and the submission deadline, I believe, is May 4th, where we'll be collecting those submissions. And our program runs as a competition, so each submission gets judges' scores, and we need amazing volunteers, like hopefully yourselves, that review these submissions and give motivating, encouraging feedback on these submissions. So judge registration is open. Mackenzie, you can probably go to the next slide. And it's really about a lighter touch way to get involved, but seeing the amazing work these teams are doing. You do not have to be an expert in mobile app development in any particular technology. You just have to be motivated and want to encourage these girls to continue their hard work and learning. Like I said, we're hoping to recruit 5,000 judges, so we would love for you to join. Anyone you know that might be interested. It's a great way, like I mentioned, to kind of get your feet wet with the great work our Technovation participants are doing. You can register at a judge at technovationchallenge.org. And then the next slide will kind of show how we prepare our judges. We always have judges coming in that are just learning about our program with no real technical background. And our judge training, that is about a half hour to 45 minutes, kind of preps you for everything you would need. All of our judges are giving a detailed rubric directly on the platform they can judge from. That's really helpful to put clear feedback in, or to know why you would give a score. It's on a 1 to 5 scale, each category. So it's pretty simple to score each category as well. And like I said, if you're not comfortable in a specific, in coding, we don't ask you to be an expert. If you leave an encouraging comment and comment that, yeah, it's clear you put some work into, that's great as well. So every judge gets a rubric to judge their submissions right on the platform. It's all online. You get to judge at your own convenience. Next slide, Mackenzie. Our judge training has great resources. It gives you examples of how to give encouraging feedback. Instead of always worrying about the nitty gritty of what might not be 100% correct, ways you can positively say, though the video at times was tough to hear, it's clear you brought energy and put a lot of work into it. Examples like that we provide you in our great judge resources. So the total time commitment for a judge is about 3 hours. Like I mentioned, about a half hour for judge training that you can start today. Judging kicks off May 6th after we have all those submissions in, and May 6th through June 8th. So you have 6 weeks to complete those 3 hours, and those 3 hours represent reviewing at least 5 submissions. So you get to look at projects from all around the globe, and we ask that you review at least 5. If it's an experience you love, you have 6 weeks to do as many as you'd like, which is neat for some volunteers. I think last year we had someone review close to 100. They just got caught up, and they were just a super volunteer and gave scores to 100 submissions. And it really is powerful for our students to get comments and feedback on their judge form, knowing that this is someone from an industry they might be interested in, from a company they've heard of and never spoken to someone from. It's really powerful getting those comments back. And now with online learning more prevalent than ever, online judging is that much more important. So I've linked here the technovationchallenge.org. I think I think we'll give you all access to this slide deck as well. And I've tried to link in the slide deck the judge overview flyer, which I pasted in the chat box, and I will paste again right now. That just gives overview information of judging to give you some more details if you want to share with some of your friends and colleagues as well.
You posted it just to me.
Just to you. Well, I did there we go. Tara now has the judge flyer, and now we will give it to everyone again, the judge overview flyer. And I think that's my call to action. We hope to see all of you as judges starting May 6th. You can register now, and yeah, I'll pause there.
Great. So yeah, I don't know if we have any questions in the chat. I think because I'm presenting, I can't see, but.
Oh, you know what, Mackenzie? I'm sorry to interrupt. I saw a lot of questions about actually mentoring. We talked about mentoring with Technovation girls. The season is kind of wrapping up now. So our mentoring opportunities have kind of wrapped up. Technovation girls runs every year. So the season gets started, sooner rather than later. And we'll start recruiting mentors later in the summer. I think mentor registration usually opens up around September, where you can sign up to be a mentor later in the year to participate. We have an online platform for mentorship. You can match with teams right on the platform. You can bring your own teams from your own networks, and you can play around with once that opens up.
Great. Then, yeah, if I can just add in there, I think what's interesting, you know, judging has its own title, but it is a great form of mentorship and a great way, if you are interested in being a Technovation mentor, to learn about what all of these submissions look like. And I think coming at it from the judging perspective at first is a great way to get involved and prepared for starting off as a mentor come the fall. So just to kind of position that a little bit. Awesome. I put up here also just what mentors learn. So if anyone's interested kind of in a little bit of what you'll get out of being a mentor, aside from, you know, being able to work directly with a team to encourage their learning and, you know, get inspired through your own creativity. There's always something special about working with students as they learn and create and change and grow, and you help facilitate that. You end up growing as well. But these are some of the other kind of harder skills that you might get as well. Some soft skills mixed in there, of course, as well.
Thank you just so much to the entire Technovation team for this presentation. As you can tell from the chat, this was such an engaging and lively group of a bunch of information. And I think that the questions were so relevant. And I know, so everyone, just in case you weren't able to copy these links, we're going to copy the whole chat. We'll make sure to send all of these links in the follow-up communication, along with the slides and the full recording of this presentation. I know that this is so applicable. I mean, all the work you're doing at Technovation is just so incredible and so important during this particular time. But I also know that the information that you just shared is very universal in terms of how you really set the stage for those impactful mentoring relationships across virtual platforms, and how even though we're losing some of those in-person touches, we do not have to lose the opportunity for really great mentor interaction. And I think that these are great opportunities for people to learn from and take back with them to their own organizations and their own work as well. So just thank you so much for everything that you shared. Thank you for everyone who tuned in today. I know that you're probably getting inundated with virtual conversations now, and it means so much to us that you chose to tune into this one. If you had to step out for anything or missed anything, like I said, we will be sharing this recording, and we will continue to direct any questions you have to Technovation. And of course, you can reach out to any of these amazing individuals for further information. But thank you all so much once again, just for everything. So excited to dive further into this work with you all.
Thank you for having us. This was super fun. And all the questions on the side, thanks for all the engagement. I tried to find all the information and send you. I think one piece that I'm missing to send is we have a pretty robust mentor toolkit. So I want to try to dig it up and send it to you all. But yeah, thank you, everyone. Brian, did you want to say something?
No, thank you all so much. Yeah, pleasure getting to speak to everyone. And thanks for having us, and hope to see you all as judges and more engaged in the future.